I always believe that pen tests are one of the best baselines where you start. When you have leadership and meetings and you're thinking what to do and where do we start? We're all disorganized, we need to tighten things up. We A lot of people are talking about these things, right? And even though they have great endpoint security, latest and greatest. There's some great organizations out there, that we work with every single day. The tools are one thing, but you can't defend what you don't test. I don't know how do you do that, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
They will. So they validate assumption that you have something going on. Surface attack surface is getting checked out, and you just make budget for it.
Welcome back to Between Fires and Futures. I'm your host, Tonya Terrell, and today we're pulling back the curtain on something every IT leader wrestles with: cyber threats. Not the buzzwords, but the reality of how attackers actually think and how long they're willing to play the game inside your environment. My guest today is Zack Aleksic, the founder and CTO of Z7 Solutions, where he leads modernization and operational resilience programs for government, defense, and enterprise organizations. With more than 30 years of experience designing and delivering mission-critical infrastructure, he's built his career as a principal solutions architect focused on transforming complex IT ecosystems into efficient, compliant, and future-ready environments. He holds federal clearance and advanced certifications from VMware, Dell, Microsoft, Cisco, Omnissa, and other core enterprise technologies. And his technical foundation began in his teen years as a gamer, a hacker, and IRC server administrator. That hands on exposure to systems, networks, and exploitation shaped his ability to understand technology from every angle: how it's built, how it breaks, and how to strengthen it. Over time, that curiosity evolved into a global career as a principal engineer and architect, guiding organizations across industries to modernize securely and operate with greater precision and efficiency. And at Z7 Solutions, he focuses on dissecting real world technology failures and attack scenarios to strengthen both resilience and performance. He conducts continuous research across the full technology stack, leveraging insights from the dark web and emerging technologies to anticipate change before it reaches production environments. He also advises executives and technical leaders on modern strategy, operational readiness, and proof of concept design that bridge innovation with resilience. And what is fascinating is that Zack started as a teenage hacker and now leads enterprise security programs for both public and private sector organizations. And unlike most security leaders, Zack actually goes onto the dark web, not to participate, but to study how attackers think and how threats are evolving. And then he uses that knowledge to help IT leaders get ahead of them, translating those insights into real protection for his clients. So today we're going to explore all of this. And this isn't about fear. It's about leadership in a world where attackers are already inside the walls. So let's dive in. Welcome, Zack.
Thank you for having me, and I appreciate the intro. That was very nice.
Yeah, so this is fascinating, right? You started as a teenage hacker and now you're on the front lines defending enterprises. How does that perspective shape the way you think about cybersecurity leadership today?
Well, it is kind of interesting that I'm one of the old school guys, as I say. Started it was, oh gosh, over 30 years ago now.
Hmm.
I always loved taking things apart just to learn. Since the Commodore days that we had, we tried to even on those systems, we were trying to kind of find our way around things, right? In the early PC days and early Windows days, systems and they were different times, right?
Yeah.
We were just kind of curious, right? We were curious about, exploring every single bits and piece of, piece of, operating environment. And, of course, gaming world, early days, IRC chats were very, very popular back in the day, news groups. So when when you actually go through that, and you kind of, your curiosity, and of course younger age, right? You want to explore things, and I appreciate those days. I'm not shy of those days, because they shape you who you are today, and they help you. Yeah, you just use it to your advantage, right? We all know that since those late mid 90s, I would say, um, it was very interesting, right? There was a lot of operating system flaws, It was lots of social engineering around by serious attack groups that we followed and looked, what they're doing around. Of course, never went that far, right? But we participated in the same environment that now those teams were communicating primarily. Of course, nowadays that's a little more sophisticated, but I think that in a nutshell, to answer the question, I think it's always that assumptions that you're never safe, and that you
Hmm.
currently have dwelling, which means somebody's sitting in your environment, and you're thinking how to go about that. How do you what plans and procedures are in place that we all have to agree. A lot of environments are lacking nowadays. So
Yeah.
my job is to transfer that mindset to teams, so that curiosity becomes a discipline, right? And then defense is just kind of becoming your habit, uh, in a nutshell.
Yeah, yeah. But I think your perspective is so unique because, security leaders typically, right, mostly see the defensive side.
Yeah,
And well, what I found really fascinating is you've explored that offensive mindset, which I think brings a unique strength to what you offer to, security leaders, IT leaders. And after our conversation, in anticipation of recording this podcast, I did a little research and I found something on Gartner that said their 2025 security outlook, that the
hmm,
boards now expect CISOs and IT leaders to demonstrate how they anticipate attacker behavior,
right,
not just the defensive side, but like thinking like a hacker, which was why I think this podcast was so timely, because that's exactly what your story highlights, that leadership means understanding how attackers think
absolutely.
so you could build strategy around it.
Yes, you said it right, spot on. There's a huge lack of. I mean, don't take me wrong. There's environments out there that there are enterprises with really serious teams, some super smart talent, that I've talked to every single day. And even when you see you have a great group of people, but you still appreciate a fresh set of eyes, right? Not just because somebody knows less, right? It's just because anyone at any time can get penetrated, get breached, right? So
Yeah.
that's something that's always in your mind. No, not paranoia, right? Just awareness. Okay, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a line there, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. And, speaking of that, like, so hackers often exploit people before they exploit systems, right? So as a leader, or what would you say to IT leaders? Like, what do they do to turn their team and their staff into their strongest defense, rather than their easiest entry point? Because it seems like they are the easiest entry point.
yeah, people are your primary risk. That's always, since the ages, since the beginning. And
Yeah.
people who follow this whole, who live and breathe technology, they know about, old school, hackers, let's say, like, Kevin Mitnick back in the day. We all remember those times. Social
Mhm.
engineering has been around. That was always the ultimate way for the intruder to get get to the where they want to be, right? So if you're adversaries, they're smart, they're strategic, they're organized, and people are your primary risk in a sense. So from the moment when they step onto the soil of the organization, parking lot, when you cross that gate, when you check in, or if you're a military base, you're going to show a CAC, get in. If you're
Mhm.
in Lockheed Martin, you have gate and guards, right? It's just physical security perimeter. And then when you go through that, which you can do, right, as a cleaner, as a you can be
Right.
just a new cleaning company in a town, right, for high profile targets, right? And that parking lot becomes your risk ground, kind of, right, or your
Mhm.
and you can they can be seating little USB drives around a parking lot, and people are curious.
Yeah.
There might be a Bitcoin on there or something. I don't know what's in people's mind, but what I'm saying is that social engineering is a primary risk, and I believe, in my opinion, that cybersecurity awareness is finally evolving to somewhere where I see it in the future, right? And
Yeah.
we in our organization we're working on things to improve that awareness. with end users, and finding ways that are just actually common sense ways that are not currently maybe implemented, right? Let me explain. People have, cybersecurity awareness, and then they watch videos and training videos, and they answer quizzes, right? It goes
Mm-hmm.
way beyond that, because why? People are not gonna, they just don't like to do that stuff. I mean, it's boring,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just, they want to do the job. They want to get promoted. So how do you evolve them to that something, that message from the leadership, right? It goes down to the end users. And how do you actually engage those users? So there's multiple ways to engage users. In my opinion, and that's what I think is the main bottleneck, is that end user community education, and that alone is, we can write a book about that.
Yeah. So do you think it's possible for IT leaders and security leaders to turn people, staff, employees into a first line of
So
defense?
absolutely, into the
Yeah.
firewall. That
Yeah.
that can be done. Some organizations are doing it great. Of course, we have all these NDAs. I mean, but you know, security aware. There's a lot of security awareness across the industry, without any doubt,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
everyone's participating. And there's some big vendors out there. They have the programs, and there's maybe like, I don't know, 10, 15 vendors out there that kind of repeat over and over, right? But
Yeah.
what I'm seeing lately is, well, of course, I think is that, a lot to do with AI, but also, people can get content faster, they can get a message faster, everything can get done more efficiently. But we need that personal touch and actually actual engagement. In my opinion, you need an actual connection between your IT and your end users. There's
Mm-hmm.
the whole psychology of that relationship, and that can be built, by implementing different different initiatives, different, and making it more fun for them. That was the kind of
Mm-hmm.
what I was looking for, making it more
Yeah,
fun
like
and
gamifying it
engaging,
almost.
and rewarding. There's the
Yeah.
most important thing is rewarding people, and a
Yeah.
lot of environment. And now we're getting into other subjects, but in a nutshell, this all ties into your corporate psychology. HR is involved. All these different departments, not just IT initially, right? Because everything is going to go back to that, onboarding, right? For the moment you engage with an organization, and go through a vetting process, and then when you start before hire, right? We
Mm-hmm.
have programs that before you hire someone, you can kind of get that baseline of where each individual is, by putting those processes into the place through your application process, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you can start at the beginning, right? Not when they're all cozy and comfortable in there. So you start building that thing, that relationship, and
Mm-hmm.
an awareness from the moment of engagement with a corporation, between
Yeah. No,
corporation and employee.
that's good advice.
Absolutely.
And I think it was one of our earlier conversations, and then I did some research in preparation for doing this.
You do your
What
research.
blew
I
my
know that.
mind, what blew my mind was, talking about some attackers don't just break in and leave; they kind of embed themselves for months. Even sitting in on IT meetings without being noticed. That just shocked me. So, what should IT leaders take away from this reality, and how should it change the way they lead their teams and secure their environments? Because that's kind of terrifying.
It is. And look, so now this happens to the largest organizations out there.
Hmm.
So then, the hackers are not just smash and grab. It's
Yeah.
it's settling in, right? And
Yeah.
it's a quiet period,
Hmm.
learning how they operate, right? And you have to shrink the dwelling time, and just, raising continuous raising detection. You have tightened access controls, rehearsing responses. You have to be, always thinking that this happening.
Yeah.
If I can just be direct, right?
Hmm.
If I'm in the, I always think, oh, okay, so if somebody is in here, if somebody is in here, what are they going to do? So you have to prevent any kind of a lateral movements. That's why all the security controls are in place. Look, if every organization would just go and perform CMMC level one. We all know, but CMMC is compliance, right,
Hmm.
for defense contractors. That's it's mandated now, but it's been around for a while. They're preparing it, right? So it's not always the fastest thing, right? When they have
Yeah.
to put together something big like that. But my point is, when you have something like CMMC, in any organization, man, I don't care how small or how large it is, and doing just that baseline, it will reduce that risk and foot, your attack surface per se, or call it. There's so many ways to call it, but just it will reduce the chances of something bad happening by over a half. Just
Hmm. That's
basic
huge.
level one.
Yeah.
So when you go to level two controls, then you can spend 40, 50 days. I have guys on my team spending 50, 60 days documenting security controls for that level two, and some of these organizations like that need to participate in larger contracts, right? So how do you do that? Well, it's a discipline, right? It's sitting down, and
Hmm.
it's the same exact thing as working on yourself, and walking every day or something. So
Hmm.
it's that discipline that needs to be, so I think that in a that's kind of what it comes down to, and always assuming that things are happening, and once you have all the controls in place, once you tighten your access controls, and all those actions are shrinking dwelling time.
Hmm.
So that's kind of that's the mindset I would go with always. Assuming
Yeah.
it's happening. Trust is not a control. And if you can measure everything, rehearsing responses. How you responding. What is your incident response plans? Do you have fundamental things? You'll be surprised. Do you have a contact for your? I was just thinking about this the other day. I was talking to my lead engineer, and we were talking about. So I said, how many people? I asked, how many people do not have a contact for their cyber insurance contact to call
Hmm.
in a case of breach.
Hmm.
Do you have it? And my I get goosebumps or whatever you want to call. I mean, I get really I get reactions to things like, oh, one guy has it, or one person has this, right?
Yeah.
So is your organization one of those organizations? Like, are you one of those, people that only has one person that holds the keys to the kingdom, or access to your response plans or something like that? If it's only one person, you have a problem. So
Yeah.
again, the cybersecurity involves a lot of discipline and communication and interorganizational relationships, which I think are extremely how to say it, underrated.
Hmm.
I think that it needs to be more of that, and then once you have that, your risk goes lower and lower.
Hmm.
We stretched it a little bit on this answer, but I hope it came across and
Yeah.
making
Yeah.
sense.
And just, some data to back up what you just said is the
Okay,
Verizon's 2025 data breach investigations report, which is one of the most widely respected annual studies in cybersecurity, right?
I love it.
Found that the average time hackers remain undetected in a network is over 200 days. It's more than
Yes,
half a year.
exactly.
So if you're not, and what you're saying is if you're not actively hunting for them, they're in your systems, maybe in your meetings, incognito,
In
learning the
IT
playbook. It's really
cybersecurity
scary.
meetings, right? In IT
Yeah.
cybersecurity meetings, they have been documented instances. So yes,
Yeah.
it's extremely. It is to me, it's scary.
Yeah.
And I work with clients that just to touch on that, from the real experience, right? I work with organizations, and these are critical infrastructure customers. These are
Hmm.
hey, we don't want to have, critical infrastructure is extremely important. So you'll be surprised how many of those environments will have, just not having incident response plans, or
Yeah.
health organizations that don't have, in Florida, we have, you have HIPAA, and then everything on that protected health information, right? I mean, those things are um,
Yeah.
personal health, PHI, like or anything that has to do with compliance. In the case of intrusion, there are consequences after that, and for the
Mhm.
organizations, and that's I'm talking about legal side, data leak occurs, I mean, all those things. So those organizations are fundamentally required to have it, and then you just don't, you have that big gap of, hey, it's missing, or they're growing so fast, and they're just focused on that growth and revenue, and things get lost. They have one computer guy, how to say, right? And these
Mhm.
organizations with 200, 100 active workers in field, serving, thousands of customers, 3,000, 5,000 customers,
Mhm.
and there's no documented procedures. So my advice is always, assume you have dwelling in house, because it can cost fines, and all kinds of things, just speaking, from what I'm
Yeah.
noticing, out there.
Yeah.
And again,
Real
there's,
consequences.
yeah, so
Yeah.
there's that.
Yeah. And you've said, I've heard you say if a CISO isn't doing pen tests every 6 months, and you did our pen test.
Oh,
Um,
yes, yes, absolutely.
so if a CISO hasn't done pen tests, isn't doing pen tests every 6 months, they should be fired, right?
That's
So from a hacker's perspective, why are pen tests so critical? And how do you think IT leaders should bake them into the strategy and budget and even board reporting?
um the first thing is that, I believe that, I always believe that pen tests are one of the best baselines where you start. When you have leadership and meetings, and you're thinking what to do, and where to, where do we start? We're all disorganized, we need to tighten things up. We A lot of people are talking about these things, right? And even though they have great endpoint security, latest and greatest. There's some great organizations out there, that we work with every single day. And the tools are one thing, but you can't defend what you don't test. I don't know how do you do that, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
They will. So they validate assumption that you have something going on. Attack surface is getting checked out, and you just make budget for it. I mean, look, I'm not, I don't know how, organizations are, having different budgets, right? But there's a pen test levels for, from basic pen test to, picking the locks and doing physical security, testing. So I mean, it's really a big menu for the organization, right, to do. But your organization is usually, advised by you have solution providers, you have, partners, IT partners, MSPs, all that, right? So those organizations that are advising leaderships are, most likely planning for this and advising them to do it, in certain frequency. If we can do it once a quarter, in my opinion, you know I'm always a, continuous pen testing, right?
Yeah.
Servers are, oh, can't do that. It's too expensive. It's not that expensive. It can be done. You have IT staff. If you don't have IT staff, you have your MSP. There are resources available. Those things are, all negotiable.
Yeah.
They're going to be negotiated when you get in these relationships,
Yeah. So how
and that's
often
you.
should they be doing it? Like once
Uh,
a quarter or like how often?
what or depending on organization, I'm
Mhm.
always saying that you need to be continuous pen testing, meaning, every
Mhm.
month, every quarter, every 6 months.
Mhm.
And what is a pen test? It's kind of like, okay, so we have, multiple action items that will, validate those assumptions, and attack paths. So you start with, basic, you know tabletop exercises. There's so many things that happen. So something's on the menu every week. Like, something's going to be on that menu out of this big pen test picture that we need to do and perform. You might be doing a outside pen test, once a month, right? And
Mhm.
then doing the weekly, practices and weekly, tabletop exercises with your staff and making that a routine. Once you make it a routine, you're always working on something that's part of that pen test, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So you're continuously pen testing your environment, but it might be from the inside perspective of assigning a user with no credentials, right? Just classic, insider threat.
Mhm.
Automation tools. I'm not saying that you have to use automation tools for everything, but AI has come a long way, and it can
Mhm.
help people. There are tools that your CISO knows about, your IT security organization, your infosec.
So,
Those
there's
are,
so many I feel like there's so many tools, and I think IT leaders are really in overload. But from your perspective, what makes a real difference? Like, what should IT leaders and security leaders prioritize in their security investments? What do you think is most important?
I really think that, from, of course, your edge, your outside environment, of course, has to be protected. Your first thing is first, access controls and identity and zero trust mindset.
Mhm.
That's kind of where we start. You have to start somewhere. The baseline will be that pen test, right? That will be your
Mhm.
baseline. If you have a current environment on the go and you're already rolling, right? And then you will basically start with, what is the how is every user that's in your organization, what access do those users have? Trimming those access, trimming the access, because Joe from finance doesn't need access to, you know, department for your
Mhm.
warehousing, right? Your warehousing.
Right.
There's some things that just don't make sense. And usually, when you're just a user, a new user, you get pretty much, you can see a lot, right? You can get, so you start with that. You start with that. Let's not trust anyone. Let's give the access, just like in a good old good old compartmentalization scenario, where we compartmentalize users into their respective groups, or whatever you want to call it, you know, entities, buckets, and then
Mhm.
perform those, give those users access to what they need and only what they need.
Mhm.
So that's kind of a good start. And of course, hygiene, right, on talking to users, and your cyber awareness, right? We talked about that, but in a nutshell, you start with that, your baseline, and then you move on from the user perspective. What have access, and of course, block everything and trust, but one thing at a time. That's classic thing for firewalls and edge, and then using good sophisticated technologies that exist nowadays. Avoiding those things like VPNs and things like that. We have so many ways to secure end users and how they operate. So depending on the organization, again, some environments have a lot of field workers, right? Their approach to security will be a little bit different. And in some environments, it's just kind of in-house, and some of them are just SaaS. A lot of organizations just use SaaS and they use, endpoints. So in that scenario, what do you focus on? Endpoints and users. Again,
Mhm.
everything starts with your user community. Everything.
Yeah. Yeah,
This is
that
my
makes
perspective,
sense.
right? I mean,
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. And then, I want to talk about like communicating the risk to the business because, one of the things that we hear from IT leaders is, they get a budget for an annual pen test, but, hackers are not testing once a year. They're testing constantly. So, one of the big challenges that some IT leaders are up against is just not getting budget for the pen testing consistently enough. But yet, they've got, I don't know, they've got mandates to go do AI or go do this shiny, exciting
correct.
thing. And so I really want to talk about like communicating that risk to the business because hackers think in terms of impact, not tools. So how can IT leaders or information security leaders frame cyber risk in business terms that executives and boards will actually care about?
That's a great question. Boards care about impact.
Hmm.
You have to translate. And I love this topic, right? Because private equity and there's all different scenarios out there that we see, and and in general, any kind of a board of directors, right? You have to translate all your findings, all your everything you know into downtime, into money, dollar impact and trust,
Yeah.
um, and that will show how reducing the dwell time lowers business risk. If that makes sense.
Hmm.
Just what we
Yeah.
talked before, prior to this question. So how do you translate that into their language, right? So they will talk about, what's the impact, and then how is our actions going to directly impact the bottom line?
Yeah.
Because they care about the bottom line, and it makes sense, right? They have different things to worry about, other things to worry about, and
Right.
one of those things that we need to make them aware of what to worry about when it comes to operational security and data security, and what would be the potential impact. We can give examples all day long, but in the nutshell, I talked about this earlier. When you don't have, let's say, the basic fundamental, HIPAA client, or anyone that's regulated by, with the compliances, right?
Hmm.
Those environments, they will basically, they need to have these, all the controls in place, and everything in place, and then go back and say, hey, if we implement pen test every month, it will directly impact and reduce risk on this, and then it will lower our cybersecurity cost. You can just go
Hmm.
on and on, but at
Yeah.
the end of the day, it really comes down to putting the money in and getting big value out of that investment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
those things are much easier to justify than some other things like, hey, can I get new monitors for my team?
Right.
So, these boards nowadays, and I believe that recent attacks caused a
Hmm.
lot more awareness among leaderships, and everybody's talking about cybersecurity. Things are happening. It's just really, I don't know. I get excited about it, right? But
Yeah.
it's exciting to see the awareness, but I'm not excited that I had to see it, after so many years, and
Yeah.
and now that it's getting really bad in out there with intrusions and breaches. So, but it's happening. It's good. AI is here to help a little bit, but it's kind of like that in a nutshell. Really,
Yeah.
the boards are getting smarter and more responsive to the requests for budget for cybersecurity. That's great.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so what you're saying is just use the same language the boards speak, right? They think in terms of impact too. So
Impact,
talk
risk
dollars lost,
reduction.
downtime, reputational damage, um,
Absolutely.
and frame it in those terms, and that investment conversation gets a lot easier. But McKinsey just reported that 91% of board members now rank cyber risk as the top business risk, higher than inflation or supply chain or anything else. So I found that statistic really interesting.
Yeah.
And we should start to see that in these conversations with information security leaders, IT leaders.
Yeah,
Um,
like I was just saying, it's been more than ever, and that's just and there's a lot of fear out there, also when they see organization. I don't want to name any organization in particular, but we know that just recently we saw a lot of breaches
yeah.
with some
I
really
mean, we see it in the
serious.
news.
We did, and it's
Yeah.
happening, and sometimes it's interesting because that when that happens is then you can find out a lot about organization too. Just are they
Hmm.
transparent to their end user community? There's a lot of things that come out of these things, and I always look into the positive side of everything, because every time when it happens, it's opportunity for us to learn and to get some, to fill those gaps and dissect those attacks, and see how could we prevented it, and
Yeah.
just take it as a learning experience, and anyone at any time can get breached. That's just how it is. It doesn't reflect. I don't like when I hear that, organization this and that. It can happen to anyone. Okay, so that
Yeah.
that
Yeah. It can
how
happen to
how do they
anybody.
How do they recover from it? How do they
Yeah.
react to it? And how are they communicating that to the end user community? And of course, internally, as I would, think always, what did they do when it happened? Like, what was their incident response protocol? I want to know.
Hmm.
And I'm trying to find out if I know somebody or anything, because it matters, and because you can help those organizations better, right? And if you do that, so like I said, if you don't measure it, you can improve it. Just
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. Zach, if an IT leader listening right now knows that their security posture it just isn't where it should be, they're listening, they're getting all this great advice from you, and they've got that sinking feeling like, we're not where we need to be. What's the first step they could take tomorrow? What's the first step they should take?
um, visibility to the environment, discovery, because
Mhm.
a lot of, if that's what you said, hey, we know we're not there yet, so there's some great organizations, great tools out there that can help you, that learn about. You have to know your environment. You got to know where your
Mhm.
ducks are, and then inventory, assets, identities, external exposure, assess the environment, and then start with the highest impact gaps. You will know what those are when you actually assess the environment. How do you assess the environment? Set a 90-day plan. With owners and dates. Bring in somebody that's going to challenge you into that
Mhm.
conversation. Don't do it on your own, or find resources. You can find resources and videos and this and that, but have a conversation with someone, even if it's just like just a casual conversation with your industry peer. Uh, Post a question on Reddit. Do something about it, and just have a conversation with somebody else that's not your immediate circle, that's not biased to your organization. It's
Mhm.
really important. And then start from there. They're going to challenge you. If they're good to you, they will challenge you. They will not be all peachy and everything is good.
Mhm.
And they will challenge you, and they will not just invoice you, put it that way.
Mhm.
And then that momentum will beat any kind of perfection, right? So just have
Yeah.
that, just go with the flow, do it, have a positive outlook, and don't beat yourself up. Everybody's in the same boat. Like I said, we just have to navigate. And when I say in the same boat, I'm talking about threat levels.
Mhm.
They're rising, right? You just mentioned that. And then
Yeah.
next year is 2026 is, I think, I read some numbers and I was just like, okay, so it's AI, right? Driven exploits now, guys.
Mhm.
Everybody's getting smarter. Have your security controls in place. I just mentioned that earlier. Start with basics. Find some compliance like PCI, or something that's easy to implement, easier to implement, or just a SOC or something. Have your documented controls, verify them, engage resources, and avoid putting all your eggs in one basket, please. That's the big deal, right? Always have um, multiple buckets, so and
Yeah.
spread your risk. Spread your risk. Don't
Yeah.
risk management is so important, at any given time of the day. So I hope that can help someone, and then
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I
take
think
that
it
all
does.
from
And
there.
before we wrap up, I would love for you to talk a little bit about what Z7 does in this space. So if someone does need help, and they don't have a partner in mind,
Well,
we're gonna link your solution pages in the show notes. But I want to make sure that you know if they need a partner to turn to, can you share a little bit about what you do here?
Yeah, we build relationships, in a nutshell, and we help organizations, strengthen their security posture, fill the gaps. Lots of large organizations, like they already have great smart people on board, and that's all great, right? But they also, because they're so big and complex, and have great leaderships. In my opinion, a lot of organizations have great leadership. They engage partners from different areas of expertise. In our case, it's evolving around backup and recovery, security, data loss prevention, and user computing. Because, like I said, end user computing is something that we're so proud of work in that realm. VDI and virtual desktop infrastructures. They're I mean, I'm talking highly secure VDIs. I'm talking about desktops in the cloud, right? So those types of engagements for us are very common. Just leadership advisory. Then from that point, what I like to say, IT partner for life is because we have partners, that we engage in any kind of a, large solutions, architecture scenarios. There are multiple, leading vendors there. I mean, I'm not gonna, name any names at this point, but anyone can find it out from just, visiting the website and looking there, because we invest a lot in that side, and make sure that we have fresh content for people, and something that can actually you know find useful. So yeah, anything is around the cybersecurity posture for organization, but also compliance. How do they get to HIPAA journey? We're not going to audit the clients, right? There's organization to do audits, right, for that, but we'll get them ready for audits, right? We'll get them prepared. That's a really a big one, right? And while doing so, that's when we dive into organizational infrastructure and user community, and fill those gaps for our customers. Some customers are great, they're fine. They just need someone to manage their end user, VDI or something,
Mm-hmm.
or manage cybersecurity, or assist their existing team. That's why I think it's a that differentiator of being proven in a sense of solutions integrations with leading vendors, right? How do you make all this, Microsoft, and I said I'm not going to name, but we all know that the big
Yeah.
vendors, right? That we work with, and Dell and Hitachi and VMware and all these vendors that are out there. How do you put it into the solution that's going to be really secure and deliver, to the community, deliver the outcome that the leadership wants. So being outcome focused, just being, being able to have those conversations on a regular basis, and just really help community as well, right? No, we don't do everything for for the English purpose. We have a lot of those customers. I like I say that they have a good mission and a good purpose, and I love those customers, right? I love working with organizations. We love working with organizations. They're out there, making an impact every single day. So that's what I think it makes me really proud, to be a part of it, be a co-founder of an organization like that, right? After
Yeah.
13, 14 years of service, right? So it's, that's kind of in a nutshell, right? So IT partner
Yeah.
for life, that's how I like to call it.
I love
That's what we
that.
came
IT
up with.
partner for
Yeah,
life.
exactly.
That's what people need. Well, thank you,
Yes,
Zach. I mean, your
you're very welcome.
perspective, especially getting into like the mind of a hacker, super helpful. And I
Yeah.
think if there's one takeaway, it's that attackers aren't just hitting and running, they're embedding, learning, adapting, and the threats are getting more and more sophisticated. Yeah, AI is helping, but AI is also helping bad actors. So the threats are real and they're evolving. And the only way forward is to think like they do and really lead with that same persistence. So if you're looking for partners who bring that mindset, who understand the hacker's perspective and translate it into protection, enterprise grade protection, just head to technologymatch.com. You could search for cyber resilience and you'll find vetted providers, including Z7 Solutions, who can help you strengthen your security posture. Or just type into the search box Z7 and you'll be directly connected to Zach. All of his solution pages will come up there. So thank you for listening, Zach. Thank you so much for your insight, expertise. It's been great. And stay tuned for the next episode.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time. It was great.